many of the conversations we have had a certain trend line to it, and I particularly always enjoy this forum because I think it allows us as a community to get together and both talk about substance, but also talk about what we do in our day-to-day engagement with our colleagues and with each other. And I think we don't get enough time together as a collective, as a group of think tankers in this space to come and think about some of these things. And I think coming here away outside Delhi in Nalanda, where you can enjoy the serene surroundings, but you have very little else to do. So you are also captive in some ways for the day and a half that we have you here. I think allows for certain kind of thinking, reflecting, which perhaps is also necessary given the times that we live in. And I think all the conversations that we have had over the last day and a half certainly provoke me and has shown pushed me to think that Delhi perhaps is not the best place to be doing these engagements, particularly as a means of getting all of us together. So we should get out more often and do these kind of. And this is the kind of a retreat that we had, and hopefully all of you also gained as much as I did from the multiple sessions that we had and from our personal individual engagements with each other. I think some of the things stood out, which are worth mentioning. One of the reasons why we do this, of course, is to meet each other annually and to learn what others are doing, how different regions, different institutions, different research clusters are engaging with each other. But I think this kind of perspectives that you get from different parts of India, given how sometimes we tend to get very metropolitan in our engagements, and I think particularly Delhi, if you are a Delhi-based think tank, it is very easy to get sucked up into the system because you are meeting every day with each other, and then there is something or the other happening. I think not appreciating the peculiarities of, say, Northeast or say Central India or South India, and how academics, think tankers, policy enthusiasts, and I think policymakers tend to think about those peculiarities. I think that gives you a different perspective, even on something like foreign policy, which tends to have a different connotation in different parts of India when you think about what are the challenges from the regional perspective. So I think when we were hearing speakers from Northeast, from South India, from other parts of India, it did give you a sense of how perhaps these interactions, and that's the intention of making this list as diverse as possible from our end. We do make an effort to bring in researchers from different parts of India, to identify researchers. When we don't find a think tank, we go to a university center and we bring in people. And I think that is the reason perhaps some at times there is a diversity which we want to encourage and hopefully take forward as we take this initiative forward over the next few years. And I think the question by the youngster at the end of it, who wants to start a think tank, Shwetang, I think, wants to start a think tank in Ranchi. In some ways is a reflection of how far, how fast, how interesting the conversations in this space in India have become. And I must admit, I think someone mentioned what is happening in the US at a time when US think tanks are closing down, are under pressure. To see this kind of vibrancy in India, I think it gives you a great degree of optimism amongst all the challenges that we have. That this space is thriving, and I think youngsters are joining and thinking about this space, and perhaps are also linking their future with this space, which is a great thing. Despite, I think, the challenge that was mentioned, that it is important not to be cut out, and I think that's the reason why this kind of diversity is important, because it allows you not to get sucked up into what did you say, bourgeois bohemian entropy, perhaps that was mentioned. So I think it is important that we keep on engaging people from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to the Northeast, and I think this collection of people that we have, and we try to sort of therefore hope that with this collaboration, with this engagement, we can further collaboration in this regard. So I think one of the things that stands out is this diversity and how it propels us to ask interesting questions, research interesting questions, collaborate with interesting collaborators, and bring together our expertise in ways that was perhaps identified is the need. And the other issue that also stood out was I think the topic of this dialogue that we had framed initially, building inner resilience. And I think what was very interesting is that almost every panel there was an element of optimism. That yes, there are challenges, but India's voice is shaping up. It is not there. It is not perfect. It is being carved by different sculptures. But in some ways, it is standing out that India is struggling, but India is also trying to frame its own unique individual response to the challenges that it is facing. And I think a lot of the discussion was about, of course, China and the US and the binary that it presents, and where India perhaps comes in with its own unique voice, with its own unique idea. And that came through even when the first time, Sachin, when we were discussing BRICS, that it was very distinct that India has to challenge some of the things that perhaps China is doing within BRICS, but India also has to challenge some of the things that Trump is doing. And in that space, can India carve out its own voice? And I think that is we heard that in panel after panel, which was quite striking and very, very interesting. So I think in that sense, we do have some very interesting ideas on the table as to what India can do. And I think it was mentioned that five big ideas we need to take forward. And I think what we intend to do, and we will reach out to some of you, which we do every year, to give us your perspective in writing. So we'll make you work a bit harder, some of you, after this conference, and get back to you, because we do come out with a report where we invite you to contribute and to tell us and to tell the community of researchers what those salient points are that you want the think tank community to focus on over the next year. And we will certainly reach out to you over the course. But I just want to end by saying that I think what is interesting and important here is that we got together, we heard each other out, and the challenges as they are, and they will keep growing, not only for this space, but for the wider academic space. And I think that point is very valid, that ultimately we are all in an academic or quasi-academic space. Now, in that sense, where are we getting our researchers from? Where are we getting our academics from? Where are we sourcing them from? And how are we contributing to that wider ecosystem is very important, because I think higher education in India is going through a transition. It is not doing its job, I think one can safely say at this point. So while we are here in Nalanda, which is setting itself up, which is this font of all ancient wisdom, we hope that this conversation about the future of higher education in India and how we as think tankers interact with higher education institutions and create and nurture that ecosystem is perhaps going to be a very, very important discussion. If you want to build inner resilience as an academic, I think that inner resilience ultimately has to be the academic excellence, if we can impart that across sectors, because that will reverberate across sectors. So that is what hopefully in our own ways, we are not an academic institution, we are just a think tank, but in our own ways, we want to contribute to that discourse. And hopefully with the help of institutions like Nalanda, we can develop that culture, and we hope that you can be part of that journey as well with us. So thank you all for being with us. And I will now invite Professor Chaturvedi for his final remarks. But I want to also thank once again my team at Nalanda and Professor Chaturvedi for his very, very kind hospitality that he provided all of us over the course of these 2 days. And hopefully we'll continue to do that over the next few years as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Harsh. I think it was a great pleasure. And I was just mentioning to somebody, working with ORF is always such a pleasure. And particularly when Samir is not around, team is so relaxed. I think it's a great fun. And also with Samir, I think the insights that he shared yesterday are extremely important for think tanks to shape the wider narrative which is there, the wider ideas which are there. And I think it is important for us to remind ourselves in terms of how it is going. It did not come up in our discussions, but there are three things that I would like to very much offer, Harsh, from our side. I think three things think tanks may consider. First and foremost, which came up across all sessions, is this huge a sort of uncertainty or sort of inability to predict, etc., because of multiple reasons that are coming in. The challenge before think tanks is, of course, to follow newspapers, but not to get influenced by them in terms of how flimsy some of the arguments are. The fact that economists, Financial Times, etc., may sound very high, but we know what narrative is being sort of given. Also, statistics. So I think think tanks, proliferation of think tanks in India, it's a phase in which we are entering now, where more and more think tanks would be there. You rightly recognized to get that expanded, and I think it is also important for leaders in the group to ensure that we do not compromise rigor, and rigor comes in from specialization that is there. Now, think tanks which are cooperating, which are coming together, they should be speaking based on the training they have got. Everybody getting influenced by IR and speaking IR language and leaving behind their own lexicon, which their subject brings in, would bring in generality in our analysis. So we have to see the interconnected world, whether Trump is dealing with economic policy or trade policy or political philosophy or sociology, you do not know. It's all combined world now. So convergence is happening. Challenges before think tanks is to give their ability to analyze, give their prediction without compromising their subject core competence. So when think tanks have to do this difficult task, when this journey is so difficult, we can rely back on a couple of fundamental points. I mentioned to some of our colleagues here, for all our courses, we have prepared a 3-credit course, which can be done in 2 to 3 weeks. And for our next academic year, it would last for 1 month. I can offer that to all think tanks, giving them fundamental expose on what we call as Nalanda spirit. Some of that I discussed in my intervention yesterday. My faculty colleagues have put in a lot of efforts in terms of what Indian thought is. All of us are picking it up from our own readings, but if it comes in form of a structured course, then that can be done. This would be online, offline, and 100% free of cost. So to this think tank community, Nalanda would be great to, glad to share details of this course, and we would be very happy to do the enrollments. When our hostlers are out, our students are out, we can bring in community for those 2 weeks or 3 weeks to share that. Second, we should bring in some support from think tanks who have already established trade and other databases. I think this session in which Preetham was speaking, I heard him and all of the other speakers, Dr. Pathak and Shreya and Sankalp, all four made very good points. I think it is pertinent on our part to create a common database for all our researchers who can part of this network, who can access the data and do their own analysis with that. It is important that we have a common sort of understanding of the statistics, at least, that is there. The third component, government has already extended one nation, one subscription. The effort to extend that to social sciences, the effort to accelerate its access to private institutions. I think we need to create a group Nalanda has already this. All the government institutions have this. Government is open to strengthen think tanks, research institutions. Why not all of us have common access to global journals? So one nation, one subscription should also be part of the India think tank forum that we have. So that was the first point that I wanted to make. Basically, bring in academic rigor, empirics, and also access to journals. This part we should do. Uh, there are too many journals, and they all go by their ranking. So I think important point is also to see how we go forward. The second point that I want to make is what Ambassador Nanda made, and I think his observation that in a multipolar world, power is not equally distributed. It is as per whatever parameter. Now, to students, I wanted to suggest in terms of multiple variables which are there for power measurement. There are several papers which have come in terms of measurement, particularly in economics, IR, which is increasingly becoming more and more mathematical in teaching. We need to get some bit of effort to bring in more rigor in our IR and not impression alone. You press on your theoretical understanding in IR. And I think instead of general blah blah, we should bring in methodological approach which can emphasize in terms of how those variables are changing or evolving. So think tank community in India would have to address that. I think this point that I noted from Dr. T.P. Srinivasan's intervention in terms of long-term structural changes or temporary cycles, that I think is a very important point which he made. And I think the whole AI session, the two sessions, I think, Harsh, they reflected very well in terms of issues which are there for AI power structure, and again brought in power balance. So in my view, 4 sessions have focused on this power balance issue, which Ambassador Nanda very rightly articulated. I think it would be important for us to see what framework emerges from these interventions. I was reading through the great summary my colleagues have made, so I think the minutes that are prepared are extremely interesting and useful. The other dimension which is important is in terms of the trade analysis. And this session, which I attended this morning, I think was a brilliant one. It has laid out broad roadmap in terms of how we go forward. So as we go forward in this journey forward, our task should be to institutionalize it, as I said, from analytical tools that are needed. Second, in terms of common points, and I fully agree with you, 5 or 4 broad points we can identify. The community is largely at this point focusing on international relations emanating out of trade, security, investment, but also technology. The fourth dimension, which I think is important, is in terms of sustainability. And sustainability brings in huge water crisis that we are going to have. Water crisis is across the border, but it is also within the country. Our intrinsic strength to address issues like agroforestry, issues like water cycles, issues like cropping pattern, and what we have imported through multiple international engagements in agriculture, which has sapped away all our resources. So how do we reverse it? What are the ways? And this is also, Harsh, important because India is also important provider of development assistance. In Ethiopia's visit, Prime Minister has further emphasized in terms of enhancing the quantum of assistance. At this point, according to our calculations, which we did some time back, $7.67 billion we are giving to other countries. Right back in 2019, we did away with this incoming aid. So we crossed it. We are net provider of development assistance to other countries. What development model we are exporting? And that's where Prime Minister's idea of leveraging international connect of India for domestic economic development, but also exporting domestic development experience to partner countries for which Dakshin was announced. So I think it's time for us to see ourselves from international perspective. And in true sense, Vasudev Kutumbakam, how that spells out in form of our international role. So some track can remain constant in this way. You encourage research which is presented at the end of the year. So today when we are closing, I would very much urge you to think of a couple of projects involving some of the think tanks. We have some resources, we can spare, you have resources, we can also jointly raise resources, and at least have 5 to 7 studies which are also presented in some track, and we line them up. All universities have money in terms of supporting dissertations. So how do we bring in more universities in this who are sincerely thinking in terms of MA dissertations? So making this platform think tanks, but at RIS I had launched this University Connect to bring think tanks close to universities. Little realizing that I would myself end up in a university from RIS, but I did. And at that point, Prime Minister had asked us to reach out to 75 universities to take the G20 idea forward. To our own surprise and to Prime Minister's great pleasure, we could achieve reaching out to 101 universities. So Harsh, there is big gap in pedagogy and the rigor that think tanks are bringing in. We need to bridge this. And it is important that our research is also adopted by universities for their own teaching purposes. So theoretical knowledge and practical input, that convergence has to happen. And that I think such initiatives can really strengthen it. I once again thank you for the partnership. I thank ORF team for huge work that they have done. And this I think is also good to get out of Delhi, because the trouble with Delhi is not Delhi itself, but the Eurocentricity that brings it, the excessive spillover effects of foreign missions in Delhi influences you to a great extent in terms of how you think and how you take the ideas forward. Ground realities, today we have planned your visit to some of the monuments nearby. But next time when you come, I would certainly like to take you to the 5 villages that we are working with. And that would give you some exposure in terms of how rural things are required to be addressed. Our CPR colleagues have left, but the water technology work that they are doing, I think it is important. Sir, you have dealt with waters all the time. It is important that we see how that recycling can be done and in what way that recycling can be done. And the purification that is needed, countries like, and Samir already said that we can invite 4 or 5 countries. Some of the countries that can help us regain control over water, be that Netherlands or Israel, whoever can support. I think we should partner with those countries to bring in more meaningful dialogue that can change the society and not just produce at the end a list for government and for the government's action. I think whatever we can do, we should do that. Thank you.